Hi, I'm Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today, to continue our supermarket beverage series, I'm going to dye some yarn with some orange Fanta. Today we are going to dye 100 grams of yarn, and this is 100% wool worsted weight. And you'll notice that I've started tying off this hank in sections. I'm using about 8-inch pieces of some crochet cotton to tie the skein tightly to help, prevent as much dye from getting in those areas. I'm also starting with a dry skein of yarn to help us get an uneven absorption of the orange Fanta onto the yarn. The way I'm tying these ties is that I'm bringing about an 8-inch piece of crochet cotton thread around the yarn, pulling it tight, wrapping the thread around a second time, and then tying a knot. This will help us get a really nice tight tie on the skein, which is kind of contrary to what you normally try to do when you're protecting your skein. And here is our fully tied skein of yarn ready to go. I've never dyed yarn with a carbonated beverage before, but it does have citric acid and yellow number 6 and red number 40 in it. So there's no reason to believe that our Fanta won't bring some brilliant color into yarn. So I have I think this is a 5-quart pot right here, and I'm adding the whole 2 liters of soda and starting to heat it up. So I think it'll likely get pretty flat by the time we dye the yarn. But it might be a little hard to tell when we're boiling. But I'll come back when we're ready to start dyeing. I think we're boiling. Yeah, that's really all I can say, is that I think we are. So I've got my skein of yarn, and I'm going to add it to the pot as quickly as I can. If you remember how quickly the Gatorade absorbed, it's possible we'll end up with some white, but we'll see soon just how much food coloring there is in orange Fanta. So I've got a wooden spoon to help me push this yarn down into the pot. And oh, I want to reduce the temperature. Ha! I almost forgot that aspect. So if you really want, and I'm going to reduce the temperature even further, I think, there we go. Some of the bubbling is probably due to carbonation. Yeah, I now have the heat on pretty low. So we'll see if these ties do much of anything, but it looks like the color is absorbing pretty quickly. If you really want to get an extreme kettle dyed effect where you have a lot of variation of tone within your yarn, then using a small volume of water, of liquid, will help you get there. That doesn't really help us in this case because I can't really adjust. I suppose I could have boiled down the Fanta to make it more concentrated. But yeah, so there's still some color in the pot, and we are hot. So I am going to let this sit for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and see if the dye has exhausted. 5 minutes have elapsed, and it looks like our dye bath is pretty much clear. So now I'm going to use a set of tongs to gently remove the yarn from the dye bath and letting some of that excess water drain out. And I'm going to set it in a bowl to cool. And so you can see that we definitely do have some nice variation of color. And once more totally cooled, I will snip those ties before we wash the yarn, because there's a lot of sugar and stuff in there that we want to rinse out. I'm now going to add a little bit of dish soap to my room temperature water bath and add our beautiful Fanta orange yarn so we can start washing it. And also, as we're soaking this yarn in the lightly soapy fiber, I am going to clip these ties so we can see what happened. Aha, look at that little white speck. It gets towards the center a bit deeper, but that is what one would expect. This one wasn't on quite as tight, so it's a more subtle patch. Taking care not to cut the yarn, but cool. These are almost like reverse specks. I think it would be cool to add these even more frequently through the skein. It's really fun. And I would say 1 bottle of Fanta, there was a fair amount of food coloring. This isn't the most saturated orange we've ever achieved, but it's certainly a fun color. Feels appropriate for fall. And I guess the other thing you'll notice is that within these wraps you get a little bit of lighter color in this interior area. But I'm excited to play with this technique of binding the yarn a bit more. Especially excited to look at this when I use the indigo tie-dye kit. Alright, I think we've got all of those specs done. And so now, given that there's a lot of sugar and corn syrup and other stuff in this yarn, I am going to rinse this multiple times with cool water and then hang it up to dry. And we'll come back with the conclusions. Check it out! We used resist dyeing to create these small white patches of color in our orange yarn. And since we started with dry yarn, we also ended up with some tonal effects where we have paler and darker orange sections. But I'm really excited that by tying the skein tightly with some just cotton crochet thread, we were able to get such large, I guess, splotches of white behind, which I think will look really, really fun as you knit it up. If you were, say, to only do 1 or 2 of these white patches around the skein, or even tie off irregular patches, like rather than all the way across, you could do irregular patches around, you could get this, a less regular repeat of these white patches as you knit up the yarn. There's so many things we can do with this technique, and I can't wait to explore it further. I hope you enjoyed this fun dyeing experiment. I know that I had a Fanta good time, and I'm really excited with the depth of color we achieved using this soda. If you want to see more fun and exciting videos on the ChemKnits Tutorials channel, check out the Dye Weekly Kickstarter campaign, where the funds that you can contribute will go towards the production of at least 25 brand new dyeing episodes. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for all of your support.